1933, the main items that they sold were tea and coffee. And to advertise the two items, they had a sign over there.
Yeah, sign that's a bit racial.
It is, yes. It has a very exaggerated representation of an African woman and a Chinese man. The Chinese guy is holding a teacup, and the African woman is holding a coffee mug as well.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. This business wasn't unique, in this practice, and this practice also isn't unique. Portugal, using these very racist representations of people to advertise products, to make them seem more exotic. I have here some other specimens from the time, which were the Portuguese. I know that in the UK, in France, Belgium, you can also find these, but I wanted to show just the ones made here in Portugal, okay? So this one is soap.
Yeah, bleaches.
Yeah, half the face is white, the other half is black, with the caption "only half to go."
What does that say? You only have to.
Yeah, only half. Like there's only half, so you just need to wash the other half, and it's done.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. That's crazy.
Then you have two labels for rum bottles, chocolate bonbons, and then here are two ads for a department store called Casa Africana, which was where the Zara is located, just up the street over there. Boogeyman who would snatch children and cook them up.
What was his name?
Papus Papau.
Papos Papao. And he's a black man.
He's a black man, yes.
Yeah.
And an interesting fact is that the illustrator who made these two covers was the same architect who did the monument to the discoveries, Continelli Telmo.
So is that the children?
These are the children, yes.
So the story was that he would snatch children and take them away?
Correct. So you can imagine how scared some children would be when they saw their first African.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, wow. Yeah, that's and obviously he was allowed to do that.
Of course, I mean at that time people weren't sensitive to these issues,
Yeah.
People could be a lot of people are perpetrators.
But
took
place in 1745,
55.
55. Okay.
6 years later, 1761, the Marquis of Pombal bans the importation of new slaves into Portugal and into Goa in India.
So it was him. So he was the person which
he banned the importation of slaves into Portugal and into Goa. Okay.
Into Goa, yeah.
However, slaves could still be imported and traded in other parts of the Portuguese Empire, just not imported to mainland Portugal anymore. Okay.
Why did he do that?
The reason is because he wanted mainland Portugal to be less reliant on slave labor and develop the capital and more technological production, while at the same time channeling all the labor to Brazil, which at the time had become the country's main source of revenue. So earlier, while we were at the port, I described how in the 1500s they were focusing on commodities like the black pepper or silk and so on, or wood, Brazil wood. Now in the 18th century, they are focused on exploiting the resources of Brazil. Okay. And
so they switched it around now. Yeah.
Now, exactly, they're more on a colonial economy and less of a trading economy. So that's when you have, in the 1500s, they extracted wood. Then in the late 1500s, they started cultivating sugar. Then in the 1700s and late 1600s, they discovered gold and other precious stones in Brazil.
What the hell?
So it's Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. It's like a woman. It's spider thing.
It's a bitsy spider. Anyway,
Yeah.
but like I said, there were different phases of resources that they exploited in Brazil. So late 1600s, 1700s, gold and other precious stones, and then in the 1800s, coffee became a big cash crop in Brazil.
So they didn't need to really trouble Africa anymore, because they could use Brazil to get their things from.
Well, they still needed, they still traded in resources from Africa, and slaves were a very crucial resource. The manpower, was a very crucial resource for Portugal, which they acquired in Africa, and they still constantly needed to replenish that population.
But it just never came here, it went straight to...
Then they would start going straight to Brazil, exactly.
Okay.
And the average life expectancy of a slave living in Brazil was 7 years.
Oh, wow,
okay?
yeah.
They would favor fully grown men who were ready to work the fields or the mines. Okay? And the rationale was that you just work them to death because it's cheaper to then get a new slave than wait for someone to be born and raised and ready to work the mines. So conditions in Brazil were very bad, and I have here some illustrations that were made in the 1800s, in the 19th century, 1800s, by abolitionists who wanted to advocate against slavery in Brazil and raise awareness to the horrors that were happening in Brazil. And in some extreme cases, you see instances of slaves being put inside ovens, boiled alive, or even buried alive as well.
Yeah, I can see. Wow, let's look at this one.
The caption roughly reads that this was a slave trying to escape from a train, and while trying to escape, his head was crushed between the cars.
That's
okay.
crazy.
So.